my wife and I and family, we just got back from a trip in San Diego. And we went to a motivational, it was a real estate coaching company that I've been a part of for 17 years. And every year they do this like family-oriented event. And it's a motivational event. And they have some super speakers there. I mean, really good speakers. We had Sinbad, he was like the opening act on Sunday night. We had this woman, Connie Podesta. I don't know if you know her, look her up. She's a great speaker, she's a great entertainer. Then this guy, Kevin Brown, I never heard of, talks about the hero effect. I'd say look it up, intense guy. I couldn't even come close to impersonating the guy. And then Nick, Robbie, you might have to help me say it, Vujicic, something like that. Anyway, so the guy's got no arms and he has no legs. And he spoke to 4,000 people, you know. And his basic message was about gratitude, you know, being grateful for what you don't have. God bless you. So, I mean, you think about that. Guy's been up there, you know, he's got to be in his late 30s, early 40s. And, you know, no arms, no legs, all the troubling times and tribulations he's been through, you know. He's up there now, he's this major speaker speaking to, 4,000 people. So it's pretty special for my kids to see it, my wife to see it, and just be around that kind of group of people. So it's a special thing, and I welcome any of you to look into it. And you can be our guest if you want to come, but you still got to pay in your own way. So it makes you my guest, but a paid guest on your own. It's $500. Anyway, so I can't pay for all you. Anyway, so thanks for coming out. So I want to talk about commitment tonight. Commitment. Big word. I think I used to bust a friend of mine's chops. I said, he was with this girl for a long time. He wouldn't get married. I said, you're afraid of commitment. He said, commitment to what? Commitment to whatever that relationship brings. And I think a lot of people get intimidated by the word commitment. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit right now and talk about, I'm going to go back to the seminar and come back to commitment, okay? So in the seminar, we had those speakers, but the gentleman, Brian Buffini, who owns his coaching company, he wanted to bring up Og Mandino. Now, Og Mandino was my first mentor, okay? He wrote this book. This is his first book he ever wrote. It's called The Greatest Salesman in the World. Now, it's in this paper, it's in this sandwich bag because this is a relic. This thing's 29 years old, this book. I read this book July of 1990, you know. Now, I'm reading it again right now, but I was afraid to bring it up here and something gets spilled on or whatnot. So Og Mandino died. He died in 1996, September 3rd, 1996. And so he can't come out there and speak. So Brian Buffini brought him back to life. He didn't resurrect him, but he brought him back to life in video. And he brought his material with him. So like I said, I read this book in July of 1990, and he talks about, there's 10 basic principles he asks you to follow, and if you follow these principles, not only are you going to have maybe a rich life monetarily speaking, but you're also going to have a rich and fulfilling life, you know, that's real. You know, it's more than the money, more than material. It's a rich life. And so I remember when I first read the book in July 1990, I read it one night, I loved it so much, I'm like, this stuff hit me. It hit me hard. I'm like, I want to get into this stuff. I wanted to make a commitment to personal growth and development. So it was my first gander at it, and the next day I went to Barnes & Noble's, I bought every one of this guy's books, every one of them, and I started reading. And what can happen when you get this, early obsession with things like that, you want to smother everybody with it. And I would get these books and I'd read them. I remember coming home from Florida and I'm buying books for my friends, and a week later I'm asking them, did you read them? No, we haven't read it yet. Why haven't you read them, Rob? You got to back off, you know? And I'm throwing these books at my kids, you got to read them. I remember Robbie was, I think, 6 and Amanda was 4, and I'm laying in bed reading The Richest Man in Babylon to him as a nighttime story, right? And Debbie's like, what are you doing? I'm like, they got to get this stuff at an early age, you know? So it's kind of comical, but now they're reading this stuff, and they're reading it at their own pace. You know, Dad used to smother them with it, and I've come to learn that you can't do that. You know, you got to be invited in. You got to let people go at their own pace. But the thing was, at that point in time, I made a commitment to personal growth, and I've been reading and studying this stuff for 29 years. And you might ask, well, okay, why are you sitting here at Liberatory speaking? Why aren't you on a bigger stage? This is the stage I'm at. This is where I'm at right now. This is where I love to be, and you're the people I love to talk to. And I couldn't, my life changed, the trajectory of my life changed the moment I read that book. So my question to you is, what are you committed to? Now, when we commit to something, right, when we commit, it's not smooth sailing. You're going to go through your trials, you're going to go through your tribulations, you're going to go through struggles. I started reading this stuff again in 1990, and I read almost every day, probably through 1998. I'm like, you know what, I got to put this stuff down. I'm reading. Now I got to go to work. I got to put some of this stuff to use, So I stopped reading for about 3 years. And I started working. I'm working 3 jobs, and I find out I'm overdoing it at work, and I'm not paying attention to what the materials tell me to do. So I got back to reading in 2001. And I'm like, man, this is great stuff. And when I read that book, I'm like, I want to be this guy one day. I want to write a book one day. And you've heard me talk about that before. So back then, it was. I read that book in 1990. I never had a thought of actually writing a book, but I wanted to get into speaking. And then in 2001, I'm like, I think I could write a book. At that point, I was like 20, 2001, I was like 34 years old. And I'm like, am I good enough to do that? Am I good enough to have an impact on people? And so I had that self-doubt. In 2005, I actually wrote the goal that I'm going to write a book. And I didn't commit to it. I just had this thought that I'm going to write a book. And I wrote a chapter in 2005. That was it. Just wrote one chapter. And then 2006 and 2007 went by. I'm like, I'm not good enough to do this. And I'm like, you know what? I can recommit to this. I'm going to write this book. So 2008, I think I wrote another chapter. And I stopped. And I'm like, are you going to do this thing or you're not going to do this thing? And it was 2000. So I was floating around, but I wrote like 4 chapters from 2005 to 2014. So it took me 9 years to write 4 chapters. And to put it candidly, I wasn't committed to it until, and some of you heard this story, I got a group of buddies, we do a mastermind group. And we meet every other Friday for 2 hours from 6:30 to 8:30. And at the end of every year, we have we call it a year-end mastermind retreat. And at that retreat, we talk about our wins for the year, we talk about our losses, we talk about what we need to fix, what we haven't done, what we could do better, ahas. So in this one meeting, we're together, it was December of 2016. And it was my turn to talk about my losses for the year. And I'm going first. And I looked at the guys, there's 3 guys sitting there in the room. And I said, as you know, guys, I have not finished the book yet. And my buddy, before I even finished the sentence, my buddy looks at me and says, Rob, you're either full of crap or you're lying to us. And he didn't use crap. He said, you're full of crap or you're lying to us. And I'm like, whoa, he just called me a liar. And I'm like, he don't know what's in my heart. I want to read this book and I want to jump over the table and hit the guy, right? And then the next guy, he looks at me and goes, Rob, he's right. Pete's right. You've been telling us you're going to write this book for so long. Where is it? I'm like, okay, that's 2 that are against me. And then I look at the third guy, goes, I'm in agreement with him. So I said, I got to make a commitment to you guys. This is a commitment to you. It's a commitment to my family. It's a commitment to myself that I got to write this book. So as you know, from January 1st, 2016 to June 23rd, I wrote every morning from 4 to 4:45. I just wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And I thought I was done on June 23rd. And here we are, August, what's today, the 13th? And I just submitted today the final edit to the publisher today. I just submitted it, Thank you. So what she's telling me is we can have this thing, we could have a book in our hands, and I say our because I plan on giving it away and selling some, but I plan on giving it away, and we could have a book in our hands by mid-November. That'd be pretty darn cool, right? But it takes a commitment. So where can we commit ourselves to? What can we commit ourselves to? And when we commit, what are we doing with that commitment? So some of you, I think most of you have seen this, but there's five areas in our lives that I believe we can commit to. So that's 1 marker down, Dina. That's what's not working. So there's 5 areas, and actually I got these from home. It's not your fault. I got them from home. So there's 5 areas that we could commit in our lives to, and we can commit to different things in our lives in these areas. So you could commit to something spiritually. You could commit to your family. You commit to your business or education. You could commit to your finances, and personally, you could commit to yourself. And it's physical and emotional. So what can you commit to in these 5 areas? Pick one thing in each area, and you can commit to it. And when we do just once, that's 5 things. Maybe do it a 90-day goal or a year-long goal. If we commit to one thing in each one of these areas, life is going to change like you wouldn't believe. Because you'll sit there, if you commit to one thing in this area, it's going to affect this, this, and this because you made the commitment and you created the discipline. Does that make sense? There's a story of a guy who became a millionaire because he created the discipline to floss his teeth every day. How does that happen? Right? I learned how to floss my teeth and now I'm a millionaire because it was the discipline of making the commitment and sticking to the commitment every day. So like spiritually, what can you commit to? Like I have a commitment every morning. I get up 4:30, 4:45. The first thing I do is I go meditate. I do this contemplative prayer and I do it for 15 to 20 minutes every morning. That's a commitment I have. And what does that do for me? It clears my mind for all the junk and the noise that's going through our mind every day. When I get up, I start my morning out where I'm in a place of peace and calm. So I commit to that. The family, what do we commit to the family? You know, I like to commit to 2 or 3 dinners a week, right, honey? I try to commit to that, but we pray at night, my wife and I. I commit to taking the family on vacations. We go to 2 vacations a year, you know, and it's different levels of commitment. You know, what can we do as a family? You know, business education, what do you commit to? Like, have I committed, so I'm in Keller Williams 5 years now, right? And I could sit here and say, my business hasn't grown the way a lot of Keller Williams agents' businesses have grown over a 5-year period. Have I gotten better as maybe a realtor or an owner or a leader? I won't ask you. But me, the person, have I gotten better? Yeah. But I can sit here and say I haven't committed fully to the Keller Williams way. And I was talking to one of the guys about 2 weeks ago, I know that I haven't been all in. And it's time for me to commit to that. If I really want this business to grow and learn some of the models and systems that they have, I got to commit to it. So I'm working on that right now. Finances, are you committed to your finances? Are you working a budget? You know, are you committed to looking at the budget, reviewing the budget, looking at your net worth? Are you committed to saving something? Are you committed to giving something away to charity? What are your commitments here? We all should have commitments in all of these areas. And then personally, where are you here? Where are you emotionally and physically? You know, physically, are you doing something? You're working out every day. Are you committed to that? Or like I commit myself to getting on an elliptical 5 to 6 days a week. You know, emotionally, I'm reading every day. I'm reading or listening to something every day. So as people here, are you doing that? And the thing is, you know, we're going to make commitments and we're going to fall off the beaten path. And it's called drift. Because things happen, life happens, and sometimes you just can't stick with things and they just don't fit in a day sometimes. But the idea is to get back on it. But the longer you drift away, the harder it is to get back on the wagon. It's just hard, right? So we got to focus on that. So when you leave here today, I'd like you all to commit to one thing. You don't have to tell me about it, but commit to yourselves to one thing and determine what that commitment's going to be and stick to it. And be willing, be willing to fail. It's not going to be perfect, but you got to feel your way through it. You know, I'm feeling my way through this book, right? And I had no idea it was going to take me 2 years to do edits. I had no idea. And now who was I telling earlier? I was telling Kathleen. So there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of excitement. Once this book gets published, I can't pull it back. So it's out there. And there's a lot of apprehension there, but there's a lot of excitement because I really feel it's going to be an impactful book that's going to impact and inspire a lot of people. That's my belief, you know. But the gift I got so I'm going to go back to how that book came about, and then we're going to finish up with a story. So, you know, I've read the Og Mandino book, and I got all this reading I was doing. And what happened, when I got into the idea of writing a book, I sat down with a woman. She said, first I want you to come up with chapter titles, one-word chapter titles. And what I did is I sat down and I just wrote it all out on paper, and then I bought this whiteboard, and I got this big whiteboard on my office wall at home. And I sit down and I would look at all the 25 chapters titles, and I'm sharing this with you because everyone in this room can do exactly what I'm getting ready to tell you to do, because it's going to be a gift for you. And what happens is I looked at the chapter titles from transparency, humility, acceptance, awareness, blessings, gratitude, abundance. These are chapter titles, right? And so I got all these chapter titles in there, and I would get there every morning after I pray, I'd sit down and I'd look and I'm like, all right, what story can I tell under this chapter? What story can I tell under this chapter about blessings, about abundance, about gratitude, about momentum, about having heart, right? What stories could I tell? So I would just write the 1-word or 2-word story, like the Amanda basketball story, the Robbie skiing story, or whatever. I would just write that out. My point there is every one of us have these books or these files of stories that we can create. Because if you don't create them, then you're relying on your memory. Now I got this board and I'm looking at these words and it's stirring my memory, it's stirring my mind up to bring these stories back to life. So my encouragement is take time and reflect daily, weekly, quarterly, whatever, and think about some of the stories in your life that moved you. And be honest with you, that's the purpose of the book I'm writing, because I want people to not say, oh, this is a cool story that Rob wrote, but I want people to connect with the story that I wrote, see how it connected with their life, and then understand a lesson behind your own story. So it's like you have your own story file, and you have story after story after story. So what happened, I finished everything, and I'm sitting there one day, and I'm looking at the board. And I'm like, man, because what do we do naturally speaking? What do human beings naturally do between looking at a positive event or a negative event? What do we naturally do? We naturally go negative. Most people go to the negative thing, or I don't have this, I haven't done this yet, I haven't achieved that, I made this mistake. So people naturally gravitate to the negative. So I'm like, I've been through my life, and you think about, I haven't, made this much money yet, I haven't bought this big house yet, I haven't done that yet. But I'm looking at this board, and I'm like, wow, my life is better than I thought it was. Better than you think. And I'd be willing to bet that each one of you, if you took the time and created your own story file and then reflected on it, whatever's going on in your life, good, bad, ugly, pretty, whatever it is, at the end of that reflection, at the end of that time, looking at all the stories, I'd be willing to bet you'd say to yourself, my life is better than I think. Be willing to bet on that. So I'm going to finish with a commitment story, okay? Robbie, you're the subject of the story. So it was 2010. Robbie, you were 11 years old? You were 11 years old? You were 10 because you're going to turn 11 that year. And Robbie had never watched, we never sat down and watched baseball together, football together, so on and so forth. So I committed to him that year. He said, Dad, I want to watch the Super Bowl this year. And so I committed, we're going to watch the Super Bowl together. And it was 2010, and I had scheduled a meeting with a woman who was going to help me write a book back then. She was a coach in writing and speaking and all that. So I was meeting her in Fort Lauderdale the weekend prior to the Super Bowl, and then during the week I was meeting 8 other curly guys, Archbishop curly guys, to go golfing in Orlando. So I fly down to Fort Lauderdale, I get down there, there's a blizzard that weekend in Baltimore, up here, remember that? And then I'm finished that meeting, I drive to Orlando, we're golfing, and another storm's brewing. And it was that storm, that blizzard, I think it hit that Saturday, that Friday or Saturday. We're golfing Saturday in Orlando, and I get a text on my phone, beep, beep, beep. Your flight has been canceled. I'm supposed to fly home Sunday morning to go watch the Super Bowl with him. And I'm like, my flight's canceled. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this. My flight's canceled, it's a blizzard, what am I gonna do? And my first thought was, okay, it's a blizzard, my flight's canceled, I can't get home, he'll understand. Right? That's the thought that went through my mind. So we're finishing up the golf round. I'm thinking, okay, how can I make this work? How can I make it work? And I made the commitment. I wanted to honor it. Finished golf round, we go eat. I'm laying down tired. I'm calling LaGuardia. I'm calling North Carolina, the airport. I'm saying, can I fly into there and then maybe drive home from there and just get home by the time Super Bowl Sunday hits? And everybody's like, all flights are off till Tuesday. I'm like, I'm not getting home. So it was like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I went into the kitchen, everybody was hanging out. I said, guys, get me to the airport. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, get me to the airport. I'm going home. I'm like, you're not flying home. I said, I'm renting a car and I'm driving home. So it was about 10 o'clock at night. They dropped me off at the airport. I get in a Tahoe. And down there, Tahoes don't have four-wheel drive, by the way, in Florida. They don't need them. Right? So they give me a Tahoe, and off I go. And I'm driving, and I'm driving, and I'm driving. And we played 2 rounds of golf that day. And I'm tired, and I want to go to sleep, and I'm driving. I remember hitting the, what's called south of the border between, Carolina and North Carolina, South Carolina. And I remember driving, and I remember I was like this, and the car went like that, and I was dozing off. And I'm like, I gotta stop. I stopped every hour on the hour. I would stop and go to one of the rest areas and throw water on my face, And so I called her and I said, tell Robbie I'm sorry that I can't make it. I didn't want him to know I was coming home. But then I told her I was driving home. I said, don't say anything to him. I'm gonna knock on the door when I get there, and I want him to answer it. So we had another foot of snow or so. And so everything was smooth sailing except when I fell asleep at the wheel. Everything was smooth sailing up to about Northern Virginia. And it was so much snow in that week that it was like 3 or 4 inches of packed ice with potholes in ice. Driving like this so it took me 2 hours to go the last maybe 40 miles. And I'm boom, 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 like that. And I get to the airport, to the car rental place, dropped the, I forget how that happened. I dropped the car, I got a ride, I think I got a cab from the car rental place to the house. And so here it is, 3:30. I called her up and said, I'm coming. I knocked on the door and he answers. And I didn't think I was gonna do this. He opens the door and I get the chance to watch the Super Bowl that I committed to in 2010. So we got to watch the Colts play the Saints, right? And it was about honoring a commitment. So what are you willing to do to honor the commitments you make? That's what I want you to take from here. What are you willing to do to honor those commitments? What price are you willing to pay to honor the commitments you made? So make a commitment. I ask everyone to make a commitment tonight in one of these areas and honor it and work hard. Make it a 90-day goal, 180-day goal, but honor it. And then watch how things work for you, because it's awesome. I'm sure it meant something to him. Maybe not when he was 10 years old or 11 years old, he probably didn't understand at that time, but I know he'll always remember that. I know he will. And make a commitment. And I'm gonna make a commitment to be a better speaker, to be a better presenter, to be a better person, to be a better dad, to be a better husband, and that's the commitment I'm making. So make a commitment, stick to it, and thank you for being here. Good?